Hello all, John here. If you've been watching this channel, you know I've been playing my guitar and singing my songs, and this will remain. But let me tell you something that my wife and a handful of others already know. I consider my truest writerly self a poet. Songwriting is just poetry with chords, so I want to put some poems here too. My own, of course, but also some of the works that have spoken to me. And by possibly introducing them to you here, they may come to speak to you the same. The first is a poem by Ernest Lawrence Thayer. He was a Harvard grad back in the 1880s. He wrote for the San Francisco Examiner for a while, and along the way he published just the greatest baseball poem ever, Casey at the Bat. There are other baseball poems. About 20 years later, Grantland Rice, an American sports writer, published his nod to Thayer's epic with his Casey's Revenge, and in 1985, American singer-songwriter John Fogerty published his nod to Thayer's epic also in the second verse of his baseball poem, which he put a few chords behind and sang to the world as center field. This is just a crazy good song and is currently in baseball's Hall of Fame. But it all started with Thayer. But listen, when I put up my last YouTube video about a week and a half ago, I suggested to a friend of mine that these little YouTube vignettes of mine may be trivial given everything, given COVID-19 still claiming lives and George Floyd's murder in Minneapolis and police brutality and endemic racism. She assured me they were not trivial because they're a part of who I am, and that's certainly true. But more so, she said that life is made up of a lot of little things, not just the big horrible things we're going through right now. So if you're inclined to hear me out on a little thing, here's Mr. Thayer's Casey at the Bat. The outlook wasn't brilliant for the Mudville Nine that day. The score stood 4-2 with but one inning more to play, and then when Cooney died at first and Barrows did the same, a pall-like silence fell upon the patrons of the game. A straggling few got up to go in deep despair. The rest clung to the hope which springs eternal in the human breast. They thought, if only Casey could but get a whack at that, we'd put up even money now with Casey at the bat. But Flynn preceded Casey, as did also Jimmy Blake, and the former was a hoodoo, while the latter was a cake. So upon that stricken multitude, grim melancholy sat, for there seemed but little chance of Casey getting to the bat. But Flynn let drive a single to the wonderment of all, and Blake, the much despised, tore the cover off the ball, and when the dust had lifted and men saw what had occurred, well, there was Jimmy safe at second, and Flynn a hugging third. Then from 5,000 throats and more there arose a lusty yell. It rumbled through the valley, it rattled in the dell, it pounded on the mountain, and recoiled upon the flat, for Casey, mighty Casey, was advancing to the bat. There was ease in Casey's manner as he stepped into his place. There was pride in Casey's bearing, and a smile lit Casey's face. And when responding to the cheers, he lightly doffed his cap. No stranger in the crowd could doubt 'twas Casey at the bat. 10,000 eyes were on him as he rubbed his hands with dirt. 5,000 tongues applauded when he wiped them on his shirt. Then, while the writhing pitcher ground the ball into his hip, defiance flashed in Casey's eye, a sneer curled Casey's lip. And now the leather-covered sphere came hurtling through the air, and Casey stood a-watching it in haughty grandeur there. Close by the sturdy batsman, the ball, unheeded, sped. "That ain't my style," said Casey. "Strike one," the umpire said. From the benches black with people there went up a muffled roar, like the beating of the storm waves on a stern and distant shore. "Kill him! Kill the umpire!" shouted someone on the stand, and it's likely they'd have killed him had not Casey raised his hand. With a smile of Christian charity, great Casey's visage shone. He stilled the rising tumult. He bade the game go on. He signaled to the pitcher, and once more the dun sphere flew. But Casey still ignored it. And the umpire said, "Strike two!" "Fraud!" cried the maddened thousands, and echo answered, "Fraud!" But one scornful look from Casey, and the audience was awed. They saw his face grow stern and cold. They saw his muscles strain. They knew that Casey wouldn't let that ball go by again. The sneer is gone from Casey's lip. His teeth are clenched in hate. He pounds with cruel violence his bat upon the plate, and now the pitcher holds the ball, and now he lets it go, and now the air is shattered by the force of Casey's blow. Oh, somewhere in this favored land, the sun is shining bright. The band is playing somewhere, and somewhere hearts are light, and somewhere men are laughing, and somewhere children shout. But there is no joy in Mudville. Mighty Casey has struck out. Hey, thank you very much. Peace, John.